My story of how my relationship with my toxic, cheating, manipulative ex happened, and how it can help others not make the same mistake. This is my, male 24, story. It's a long one, so be ready for a ride. I just recently broke up with my girlfriend, female 20, of 2.5 years this past week. It was terrible, and I was so miserable through all of it. The first year was great. We were in love and it seemed great. Once the first year went through on our first year anniversary, this is when it all started to get terrible. I had known this girl for almost 7 years, and now it's been 10. She is one of my closest friends. We met at a church youth group and have pretty much stayed friends ever since. There was about a 2-year period where we didn't really talk that much, but then one day we just started talking regularly again, and she seemed to have changed a lot, and I started to see her in a different way. She had a crush on me from the moment she met me. Ever since, we have been pretty much best friends. The reason I stayed with her this long was pretty much the same as everyone else. I thought I could change her, or that she would change herself. However, that never happened. This is what happened. I'm not telling my story for pity or validation. She still claims she didn't do anything wrong, and we just weren't compatible. But I'll get more into that later. I know she destroyed me. I'm telling you this story so that anyone going through the same thing or similar knows that there is a way out and that you can survive and thrive, but you need to get out of those situations in any way you can. 1. A few months before our first year, she has flat out told me I'm ugly, dumb, the worst she has been with for no reason at all. Or, if there was a reason, she refused to tell me what it was when I would ask her. I would always ask, is there anything I'm doing that is hurting you or that I can do better? And at this point, she would just say, no baby, you're amazing. 2. Our 1-year anniversary. Our 1-year anniversary was back in September. A bit of backstory before this part can truly start was that I was going to college to become a math teacher. I was in my final semester, which was student teaching. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's pretty much I go to a public school and be a teacher's assistant until I slowly start taking over the classroom myself until I'm fully the teacher. Now, this was the single most horrible experience of my life. I had wanted to be a teacher so badly, but the teacher who was in charge of me was absolutely terrible. She verbally abused me every day and had the most impossible standards imaginable and blamed me when I didn't reach them. I was there for about 6 weeks. Every day I went home crying. I stopped eating and I stopped sleeping. Now, despite all of this, I wasn't going to give up. I was going to finish. But before I could, my teacher wrote a bad review about how bad I was doing compared to her standards, which even then what she said wasn't true, and they ended up pulling me from my placement without any consideration for what I went through. So my entire future just went up in smoke. Now I know you're wondering what this has to do with my girlfriend. Now our 1 year happened to land on a Tuesday. Of course, most of that, say, being a weekday, I was going to be in school. So I told her instead of trying to make that day work, why don't we just try to aim for either the weekend before or the weekend after to do things? She completely agreed, and we never made plans beyond that. So the day of our 1 year comes around, and after I got pulled from my student teaching, I went to my family's, which was an hour away, because I needed time. I was so emotionally destroyed because of everything I went through, and the fact that I felt like a complete failure. Well, she all of a sudden comes up and is like, you should come and see and do our 1 year today. Now, here's my reasoning of why I said I couldn't. 1, my family had already known I was staying that night, and I didn't want to leave right then and there. 2, I was going home the very next day, and I told her that I had no problem doing something with her tomorrow. 3, I didn't have gas money to drive an hour back, do whatever she wanted to do, then drive back only to go home tomorrow. But she offered gas money. But I also drive a 20-year-old car and didn't want to put more mileage on it than I had to. 4, it was already 2 to 3 p.m. when she brought this up. 5, we didn't make plans on that day to start with, but she was acting like we did. 8, I think that was a typo and supposed to be 6. I was still emotionally compromised and didn't really want to do that particular day. After explaining all of this, she proceeds to throw a complete tantrum, saying how I don't love her and how this isn't important to me because I'm not dropping everything for her and all that stuff. Now, I know this looks kind of bad to some people, and I've been told I was cruel for not wanting to spend my 1 year with her. But at the time, I was still going through so much I practically begged her if I could just stay the day and then go tomorrow because I needed that time still just to breathe. I get where she was coming from because it was our first anniversary, but again, she didn't even think about it until 2 to 3 that day anyway. Point 2. Again, I think that was a 3. Becoming cold. She started to become cold, and I mean, I couldn't joke with her anymore. Every time I did, the same way I did with everyone else in my life, she throws a fit. This is a conversation we had a while after our 1 year in a mall. Hey, this GameStop used to have a movie place by it before it closed down, right? I ask.
No, there was an empty store, and then it was the movie place,
she replies. Nah, I'm pretty sure it was next to it. But, I don't know, obvious sarcasm and smiling at her.
Oh my God, whatever. I don't see why you make a big deal out of this crap.
She yells at me in front of everyone in the mall and storms out. She said I always joked too far, but things like this didn't seem too far. She then complained when I didn't joke with her because she wanted me to, and I've told her how that puts me in a hard situation because whenever I do joke with her, she gets upset like this. The second part of her growing cold is she always talks to me in a nasty tone. This was a conversation we had one night. I call her. She answers.
What?
She starts off with, Hey, are we going to church tomorrow or no?
I told you already that I wasn't.
The last time we talked, you said you didn't know.
Yeah, well, if I was going, then I would have told you.
All of this is in a very condescending and mean tone, by the way. Okay, I didn't know if you'd forgotten or not. Sorry for bothering you. Good night. She immediately hangs up. There had been this constant aggravation with her. I couldn't do anything without her yelling or being emotionally abusive towards me. 4. She begged and tried to manipulate me for a time to get engaged to her. This one is one of the worst times in our relationship. We were in the car one day and we were talking and the idea of getting engaged got brought up. I merely said this. I feel like we are close to getting engaged, but there are some things I think we both need to work on before we are ready. That was all. She proceeded to have a mental breakdown saying how I don't want to get engaged to her, how it was stupid of me to say that, and how I completely crushed her. I wanted to be honest about where we were in this relationship, but she apparently couldn't handle that. So I apologized and we talked more about it. She still didn't understand what I was trying to say and was still on the idea that I didn't want to be engaged to her, even when that was nowhere near what I said. She proceeds to try to manipulate me into getting engaged to her. Every favor I ask of her, she's like, Get engaged to me, then I will. Even showing affection in public. I'd try to kiss her, and she would say, No kisses until you propose. And this wasn't in a cute little joking flirting way. This was out of anger and rage. This leads into the next part. 5. She hits me during Christmas in front of my whole family. It isn't as bad as it sounds, but physical abuse is still physical abuse. My family has this big yearly celebration on Christmas, and she of course was invited. She had wanted me to leave my family Christmas Eve night, which I already made plans with my family, to go spend at her house because I need to make up for hurting her about what I said about getting engaged, and I said no. My family I hadn't seen in months, and I needed time with them, and it's not like she was doing anything for Christmas. She shows up, still being completely emotionless because of how hurt she says I hurt her and the fact I won't go over. Sits down on the couch, stares off, has an absolutely mean, angry look, and doesn't move. Period. Doesn't make an effort to do anything or talk to anyone. She still, to this day, blames me for it. I sat down next to her and I don't remember what I said, but I joked with her about something, not related to her being mad or anything that would trigger her. But she took her elbow and landed it right in my ribs with pretty much all her strength because she was so mad. Now my family saw this, and they all started to get worried about our relationship, which I understood. She also got mad at me one day because I didn't give her sex when she wanted it. And she slapped me on the butt with all of her strength, and I said, Ow, that really hurt. And she said, It was supposed to. She also grabbed my arm and dug her nails in it, which made me bleed. Both of these were within the same day. She says she never hit me or did these things, but again, my whole family saw it. She then proceeds to leave in a huff. Called me at my parents because she wanted me to wait to go over there until 7 p.m. when my family left at 3 p.m. I wasn't going to wait to be yelled at and begged to spend the night. Well, I was going to tell my family I was waiting for virtually no reason. She calls me and is screaming, Why didn't you wait for me? You could have waited. And I told her I didn't want to be screamed at again or hit. She proceeds to keep begging, which again is like 8 p.m. and I couldn't just up and leave. And eventually hang up, and she proceeds to keep calling me about 50 to 100 times. She eventually gave up and went home, I think at about midnight. I wasn't comfortable seeing her for a while after that because I needed to process what happened. 6. She puts all of her friends against me. Now, I don't know what she was telling people, but everything I've said up to this point, she has gone on rampages and told every friend she could find, and then will come back to me and say, "They are all on my side, so you're wrong." Now, I'm not present in any of these conversations, so I don't know what was said. She says she tells them my point of view, but how can she when I'm not there? So all her friends hate me. More on this later. 7. She stopped letting me live my own life. For some reason, every 4 to 8 weeks, she says she needs me to go over there for a day or for a night and just be with her. Now that alone isn't the problem. But there have been a few times where I just haven't been able to do that. I have had schoolwork to do, or I have personal things at the house I have to do that are important, or anything. If I tell her no, she proceeds to be like, "I can't do this anymore. You don't love me," etc. I feel trapped at times, and I can't do my things in life sometimes. We sat down and had a talk about it, and I said, "Look, I can't do everything I have to do. Go see you when you want and need me to, because that's just too much right now." And she doesn't even try to come up with a plan that will work. She's just like, "Welp." I eventually started going over there whenever she asked me to, just so that she wouldn't get upset, which turned out to be like 4 to 5 times a week. I started to lose sleep because she works different work schedules than I do, so she could stay up late when I couldn't, but I couldn't tell her no or else I'd get yelled at. 8. Valentine's Day. This was February of 2021, and it was of course Valentine's Day. Now I had told her already that I wasn't financially stable and couldn't afford to take her out to eat. This wasn't because of bad spending habits. My job was taking everything I had and was continually cutting my hours. I was barely making enough to live. I was looking for another job, but nothing had happened yet. I saved up enough to buy her what I could though. I bought her a stuffed animal and some flowers and candy, which was all I had saved up. She then goes and posts on her Snapchat story, "I see everyone going on a Valentine's Day date. Must be nice," in front of me in the car, and where everyone could see it. She knew my situation and knew what I was going through and still posted that regardless. If I wouldn't have done anything with her that day, then I would have understood. 9. She talks about me badly and insults me to all of her friends. One night while she was at work, she wanted me to mobile deposit a check for her because she was busy working. She couldn't do it. She hands me her check and her phone, and after she was done, she was going to come by and pick it up. Now, I did what she asked, and I went and I go through her phone, and almost every person she talks to, she references me as a B-word, a dick, a dumbass, and other things that almost everyone when I wasn't even doing anything. I'm pretty sure it was about all this stuff before, and she never talks like that in front of me. I also found out she had a friend in South Carolina that she was planning on going to see, a guy friend, and was going to get a hotel room with. Now I knew about the trip, but nowhere near about the guy. We talked about it later that night, and she apologized about it. She had canceled the trip already, which I also knew, because she realized what she was doing, and the talking bad seems to have stopped, or at least she does it over the phone or I won't know about it. I know I shouldn't have gone through her phone, but with everything going on at this point, I wanted to know if there was someone else or what she was doing that she was treating me this way. 10. Her big summer trip. She had this big trip she wanted to go on in June of last year. She wanted to go to South Carolina. Rings any bells? She wanted to go see the same guy in South Carolina. Now that in and of itself, I wasn't comfortable with, but then she proceeds to tell me that she wants to get a hotel room with him to stay with him. She brought this up again a few weeks before, and I said I absolutely wasn't comfortable with it. How could I be? A guy I don't know is going to be alone with you for hours? No. She says if the roles were reversed and I wanted to see a girlfriend of mine states away, that she would let me, but I know that's a lie. I told her outright that I wasn't going to be in a relationship with her if she did this. After much arguing, she agreed to give it up because she didn't want to lose me. For about a month. She posts on her Snapchat story a month later. This guy's picture, "Thank you for being an awesome friend. Can't wait to see you in June." I called her immediately and asked her what that was about. Her response was, "Yeah, well, I'm thinking about it again." And that was it. 11. Sexual teasing. She would be cruel with the way she would treat sex. I have a very high sex drive, and she has a very low sex drive. Sometimes I wish that when I would want sex, she would give it to me even though she wasn't in the mood, but of course, I would never force her or push her in any way. The problem was, if I ever tried to turn her on, no idea if she's in the mood or not, and it just so happened to be not in the mood, she would freak out and say I was addicted to sex. Making it sound like every day I was doing this when it was maybe once or twice a week. Now on her end, she knows what turns me on and is incredibly attractive to me. She would tease me, turn me on, sometimes even do things completely, but then stop halfway and just be like,
I'm not in the mood anymore.
if this were to happen every once in a while or anything, I'd be completely fine with it. But no, she would do this every single day. Every time we hung out, she would tease me and make promises and hype it up. And then when the time came, she would shut it down and not do anything. Day after day. She then proceeded to start telling me and some friends how I'm just addicted to sex and would get upset when she would say no to sex. However, no, it was not the no I would get upset at. It was the teasing until I'm about to explode, metaphorically. Kinda. I talked to her multiple times about this, and she refused to ever work on it. 12. The first breakup. So, while I was struggling with all of this, she apparently had been talking to her family about breaking up with me. She had it set in her mind that I wasn't good enough, even though I gave her everything. After everything she did, I kept coming back, and I loved her more than anything. She came from multiple abusive relationships, and for her to go from being abused to acting like I'm not good enough for her, she invited me over to her house, and from the first moment, I knew where it was going. All my friends had told me to break up with her first, which partially did happen at the end of this first breakup. She then sits me down and says how she isn't happy with me, and how my own life choices are essentially disappointing her and judging me for everything in my life. What I mean when I say this is that she didn't like the fact that I was staying with family to save money. My family said that I could stay with them as long as I wanted to, as long as I was working and then saving money, which I was. She thought that I should just jump out and be independent just because. No reasoning. My plan is to save up and buy a good car and eventually a house instead of having to rent an apartment and not struggle with all of these things at the same time. I have college debt and other debt that my family is letting me pay off. She didn't want it though, and she proceeds to take literally every single minor thing I did for the past few months, like how I didn't help her make her bed 3 months ago and how she wasn't dealing with it. I help her constantly around the house. I don't know why I didn't help her that time, but I help her constantly. She got into a car accident a few weeks prior, and I drove her around that entire day and the next day to help her get situated with her rental and insurance, but she didn't remember or bring that up, did she? I then try to talk to her about these things and tell her it's unfair how life hasn't been that kind to me, but I'm doing my best with what I have. I then bring up how I've been a good boyfriend to her and how I know I'm not the best and I've made mistakes, but I've been a good boyfriend. And she full on scoffs at me. After that, I said I'm done and walked out. She called me the next day saying she missed me and she was sorry and she wanted to get back together. I said no. 13. The new guy. 3 weeks after we break up, I come home from my new job and my grandma says how my ex got a new boyfriend. I said, yeah, ex before her name, I know she's been in a relationship for years. She responds with,
Not that ex.
I look on Facebook and she's posted that she was in a relationship with a guy she was hanging out a lot with before we ended things. And I mean a lot. She was over at his house with his family and was continuously telling me I had nothing to worry about. I tried to talk to her, but she was working. So I called her mom and asked her mom if it was real. Her mom said it was, and I said, okay, thank you for telling me. Good night. That night, my ex calls me to explain, and she says she didn't want to get in a relationship this early, but they were hanging out, and then he jokingly asked if he asked her out what she would say, and she said yeah. Apparently, he was serious, so they went out that night, and they became official. She says that she thinks that she checked out of this relationship months before, and that's why she was able to move on so quickly. This is when I think she was full on cheating on me because, again, she was hanging out with him all the time and most likely was cheating, even though she denies it. She then immediately starts sleeping at his house and full on being in a relationship with him, even though she absolutely didn't want to be, or so she says. I tried to stay friends with her after this, and this is one of my flaws. I would have trouble keeping her blocked because she was again one of my closest friends. I would block her, then miss her, then unblock her, and then we would talk, then she would be cruel, and I'd block her again. I know this is toxic behavior on my part, and I worked on it until I fixed it, and I don't have to worry about this now. I was sitting in my room one day after she started dating him, and she posts on her Snapchat story of the guy she's with now, saying that she's so lucky to have him. I ask her if that's the guy, and if they plan on staying together, and she says, yeah. So I then immediately block her after her response on all social media and contacts she has with me. I was still a little in love with her, so it isn't healthy for me to be here seeing those things while I got over her. And I didn't want her to think it's okay to come into my life and talk to me about her new boyfriend and his problems, so I blocked her completely. I found out from friends that she starts bashing me on Snap about how she gave me so many opportunities to be better, funny, when I was the one getting abused, and how she's so happy she found someone better. Fast forward a few weeks and my cousin, who is friends with her on Snap, messages me saying my ex wants me to unblock her to talk. I ask for what, and she says, "Just do it, please." I do it even though I know I shouldn't have, and we start talking, and she tells me how she's been missing me and wants me back. She knows she messed up getting into this relationship with him and regrets it and wants me back. Well, after this conversation, the final nail in the coffin for them was that he raped her. I pushed her for a long time to try to report him to the police, but she refused to. Even to this day, she still hasn't. She breaks up with him, and we start talking, and she seemed to have changed a lot. I'm not on edge. She apologizes for everything, and we started dating again, much to my family's dismay. 14. The second breakup. We had been going great the next few months. We were communicating and loving each other stronger than ever. The only thing that changed was that she couldn't stand my family and my family couldn't stand her. My family never treated her any differently than before, but she felt so self-conscious around my family because, first, she hit me in front of them, and second, she dated a guy 2 weeks after breaking up with me, so everyone assumed she cheated on me. She felt guilty and didn't like being around them because she knew what they thought. Now, this past year, we had a major hurricane, one of the worst that has ever hit the US. My family planned on entirely evacuating, and she and her family didn't. I had told her my plan and she wanted me to stay with her during the storm. I didn't feel comfortable staying anywhere during this storm, and I made that clear. She never begged me to stay or anything after that, but I begged her to come with me away, but she refused. I asked if we could compromise and go somewhere in the middle, or something out of the way, and she again refused. Wanted me to stay home during this. Well, I told her my plan, and the day before the storm, me and my family left. She called me on the way up there and was texting the entire ride, furious again about how I could possibly leave her there and how this proves I never loved her. I know this one may be my fault, but as I said, I didn't know how things were going to turn out, and I felt I needed to make sure my family was safe and that I could help my family in this time of need. I communicated all this to her, but she wanted me to only take care of her. We get back from the hurricane, and the first thing she wants me to do is go see her, which I couldn't just straight up do. Our home has been partially devastated, not to mention our other family members that needed help. Her house was perfectly fine. She just wanted me to go spend a day or two there when there were people who needed me. We came up with a plan to go to my parents', and I helped take care of my great-grandmother while everyone else gets their houses straight. She did drive and come see me at that point. After she came and saw me, there was this complete wall that I couldn't get through. She wouldn't text me or call me or anything. No affection, no attention, nothing. Her reasoning,
"Oh, I just don't want to be in a relationship right now."
Yeah, okay. She was so hurt that I left to make sure my family was safe and to help with anything I could that she didn't want to be with me anymore. I started going to work again, and I ended up catching COVID at my parents', so I was quarantined there. This was after 3 weeks of no affection or attention from her at all. I finally snapped one day and went on a rant about how I thought she had changed, but how she is acting just like she did before, and how I'm dealing with a lot, and instead of helping, she was making it harder. She then proceeds to rant and ends up letting it slip that she's been lying to people, saying I flat out told her she wasn't a priority and how I didn't care. Not mentioning how I was taking care of my great-grandmother and then caught COVID, so I wasn't able to see her as much. She then breaks up with me over text while all this is going on. Again, I'm going through COVID and I'm dealing with a lot of family loss with their homes, but she didn't care. 15. The calm. After this, we didn't date really for another few months because she was doing her own thing. We ended up talking, realizing that we still want to be with each other, but decided to stay friends for now. Everything was okay for a little bit. One day, I accidentally screenshotted a post from her on a Snap, and then I apologized because, of course, I didn't mean to. This was something I did all the time while we were dating, so it wasn't that weird. She responded with a flirty response that made me feel like it was okay. Looking back now, I know I should have asked if it was okay after this, but I didn't even though I should have. But despite this, I kept doing this because I thought we were getting back together. Well, she was hanging with a friend or two, I can't remember which, about a week or two later. Now all this time I had continued it, and she never said anything, and we had gotten closer. This is how the conversation went.
"We about to fight."
She says in a serious tone. "What did I do?" I reply.
You know what you did.
No, I really don't.
You know you aren't supposed to screenshot me when we aren't together. I've told you this multiple times, and it's creepy, and we aren't together, and
just starts going off. Now, it wouldn't be that bad if I'm text form, but this was all entire snap videos of her yelling at her phone with her friends right behind her. She purposely made me look like that in front of her friends, and she says she just
never saw the notifications from me
about my screenshotting for weeks. I didn't believe that for a second, but we moved on. I asked her to please never bring up stuff like that again with her friends around. I never had talks with her like this in front of other people, and immediately after, she said she wasn't okay with it. I stopped and never did it again. But despite all of this, she asked to get back together, and I said yes. 16. The final straw. This past time was great as well, just like the second time, and just like our first year. I was doing everything I possibly can right, and she seemed happy. We ended up talking about getting engaged, and we agreed, and she picked out a ring she wanted, and I bought it for her. A few weeks passed by, and nothing major happened, but she started to grow distant again. Just this wall I couldn't get through, again. I tried talking to her about it, and it was always,
I'm just tired,
or
I'm just busy.
Which I knew at this point, being together 2.5 years, that when she was tired or busy, she never acted like this. Everything became extremely one-sided. If I needed anything, and I mean anything, I mean a simple back rub, a single kiss, anything, I wasn't getting it. But if she wanted anything, I either gave it to her, or she wouldn't stop whining or complaining until I gave it to her. One night, a few weeks later, she starts randomly telling me what's been going on. She doesn't know if she wants me, period. Doesn't know if she wants a future with me or anything. She says again, I joke too much, which this time she just talks about times I joked with her when she didn't want to be joked with. There was no signs or anything she wouldn't want to be joked with. I would just make a joke randomly, and she would just be fine, and then start screaming, and how she can't deal with it, and goes on about all of this. After I bought her the ring, she wants to break up again, to find out if she really wants this or not. Of course, I'm furious because even though I hadn't proposed and the ring was still at my house, that she had all this time and was asking me to come back to her, and she doesn't even know if she wants me, I leave and have a breakdown because I didn't know what else to do at that point. I wasn't doing anything wrong that she could tell me, and the things she pointed out, I was already working on. I leave her house crying because I didn't know what else to do, and I was going to end it in a few days if things didn't change. But they did, surprisingly. We were hanging out one night, and she looks at me and says,
You're the one I want. It's you. It's always been you.
Which felt amazing. And after that, things were fine again. For about another 2 weeks. She then starts becoming distant again. And the same thing happens yet again. This wall gets put up. I find out she's texting the ex that raped her again. And I finally, after all this, I finally snapped. I called her and asked her what was wrong. And she admits she still doesn't know if she wants me. And I said I was done. I told her off and said I was done with all the manipulation, the abuse, everything for about 30 minutes straight. I let all the emotion I had held in out. I blocked her. I knew she still had my things at her house and vice versa, but I was going to get them when she wasn't there. My cousin texted me while I was on my way to her house to get my things if I can quickly unblock her. My ex's question after all that? If she can keep the ring anyway. I still had it at my house and I had never given it to her. This was the confirmation I made the right decision. She could care less what I did or what happened or how I felt. She just wanted the ring. I told her flat out, you don't deserve it, and I'm going to return it to get my money back, and wait until someone who actually wants it and who deserves it will have it. 17. Conclusion. All of this to say, she is still blocked, and after 2.5 years of misery, all the cheating, all the abuse, all to say what? That I am perfectly happy with who I am now. I went to therapy and started to get my personal life right and see myself for what I am worth. I can't believe I put up with as much as I did, and I think this is a story that everyone can benefit from. If I can live through all of this and survive, then so can you. Those who are struggling in these situations. But here's the problem. You need to get out of those situations to start with. There is a reason these people are called toxic. They are poisonous to you and will drain you and your life with everything they have. I had to get out of that situation and get myself right before I could truly be happy. And now I'm ready for whatever new girl comes along that will treat me the way I'm supposed to be treated. I hope you can learn from my mistakes and live a better life than I have and make better choices than I did.